and welcome to Room 420. Today, my guest is Hannah Vail. She is an actress and photographer based here in Colorado. Hannah, how you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good. We're talking about stumbling into a podcast.
Yeah.
You said you've done a podcast before?
I have, during quarantine. Like everyone else started a podcast.
Yeah, I feel like that was the best way to do it. So did you do it over Zoom or how'd you do it?
No, my brother just had a mic set up, and so him and another friend of ours just set up these mics and recorded it together, and we talked about the 100 essential movies that everyone should see, but they were all from a different year. So I think it went back to like 1920.
Did you get through them all?
I didn't. Yeah. I kind of quit the podcast when quarantine ended and life came back.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Like, I don't have enough time to watch movies and talk about them on a podcast.
Exactly. Trying to be in movies at this point.
Well, so did you get the list from somewhere else, or?
No, I think the friend of ours actually made the list.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was all sorts of different things. And I had never taken the time to watch movies from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Like, I've seen the classics like Audrey Hepburn. I love those movies, but nothing from 1930.
Yeah. To watch stuff like the African Queen or like the Maltese Falcon, but you're like,
Maltese Falcon.
It's kind of, that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
You're like, the obscure stuff is kind of fun. You're like, oh, this was not popular.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or, oh, this was really good, or way ahead of its time, or this one's really bad.
I think like It's a Wonderful Life is one of mine from that era.
I love that one. That one was on the list.
Which I think everybody, I don't know anybody who's like, I hate that movie.
If they did, they're wrong.
You have a sour soul or something
like
exactly.
that. You're Scrooge.
So you're an actress.
Yeah.
Do you have an approach to watching movies? Or are you analytical with it at all, or?
I think I am without trying to be, without wanting to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, or even just watching shows, like finishing Ozark and Stranger Things lately. Mm-hmm. You're just sitting there and you're like, oh, that actor did this and that was brilliant, even though they might not have thought about that.
Yeah.
I think I kind of dissect it subconsciously.
I get you.
Yeah.
How did you get into acting?
I was peer pressured into doing theater when I was 13. By friends, and I had FOMO, so I said yes and croaked out Amazing Grace and was in ensemble, and not a great production, but I loved it.
What is ensemble?
Ensemble, just kind of being an extra in a play or a musical. It was a musical. So I was in the group dances and the group songs and no lines, and that was it.
So this was in middle school?
Yeah, middle school.
What was middle school like for you? I don't mean to bring up some trauma, but...
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm an open book. Yeah. No, I was homeschooled. So yeah, I grew up in Wyoming and then moved here when I was 12, almost 13. So middle school was transitioning and moving, and I joined a homeschool group, and that's where I got to join the theater because they were known for their theater program. And so that's also where I had like social time and got to meet friends and do extracurricular activities outside of being schooled with my siblings.
So you were homeschooled? Did you go to high school too, or was it homeschooled?
I was homeschooled till I was 16, and then I joined a program called Colorado Early Colleges. And so I did college classes full time, and it counted for my high school diploma and my associate's degree, which is crazy. So I graduated college at the age of 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like that's
really
something
nice.
A lot of people don't know about.
They don't, and it's free.
Yeah.
It's free. Yeah, you just test in, and it's a lifesaver.
Holy cow.
I know.
That's probably why they don't want people to know.
That's probably why.
What did you study when you were doing that?
Psychology.
Psychology?
I majored in. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've probably implemented that with like your photography and acting.
Absolutely.
How have you kind of used that, you think?
Psychology, I think, can definitely be applied to acting. We're studying humans and characters, and so just diving into why they think and what they're thinking and how they're feeling. I mean, knowing the causes of that is really insightful for when you're building a character and just getting to know them. And on the side for work too, I've done CIT work, and I've worked with Child Protective Services, so that comes in handy, having a psych background, walking into these, I guess if no one knows what those are, crisis intervention training is where actors come in and we act out different mental illnesses or people in crisis. I was usually a 15-year-old having a really bad day with some type of disorder, but I already knew about all of them. I knew each diagnosis. I had studied them for years in school, so being able to act them out, I think, just kind of implemented it deeper for me I was able to learn about it even more, and it just challenged me to act because each situation had to be completely improvised. So that was a really cool way to tie in both things.
So so with the mental orders, mental disorders, how did you kind of approach that or like act that?
Well, you don't want to do it wrong.
Yeah.
Like you want to do it right and respect people who are actually going through that. And then these officers or the caseworkers who work through Child Protective Services, if they're encountering it, you want to be an accurate representation of what they're dealing with or going to deal with. Yeah. So it was definitely going back to study it a little bit and really watching videos or documentaries that featured people who have lived with these disorders and illnesses, and just studying their habits, the tics they share, what's common ground for all of them, the struggles, how they talk. A lot of them have shared physicalities. So it was tying those into characters and just creating a personality around those habits, if that makes sense.
Okay. So like an officer would be able to pick up or this is like a bipolar episode, for instance, stuff like that. Yeah. Versus, is there a difference between like a bipolar episode and like a drug episode or anything like that?
There is, yeah. And there's just different cues. And so they're in class all week studying certain disorders or I would say like triggers or signals, like what to look for and what might be what. And so they'll pause you halfway through the scenario and let the officer guess what they're dealing with before going back in. Okay. So, yeah, if it's bipolar, maybe you have the switching moods or some rapid, it's more of a mood disorder. Yeah. So you're really unpredictable. Yeah. You can also be really narcissistic in that one. And then if it's a drug thing, you're maybe a little more paranoid, a little more negative. I don't know. It's just how they use people to their advantage. Yeah.
I'm curious too. Like, I mean, we talk about like how different drugs affect people a lot of time in this podcast and in our news, but like, I think cannabis is one of those. I think as an actress too, you're probably like, all right, be high.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever heard that cue and you're like, or what do you want?
Do?
What does that mean? Is there any struggles doing that? Like playing high, I guess, or like, do they give you like, all right, hey, you just use cocaine versus marijuana?
For those jobs, it's usually something more intense, like cocaine, or you're in an episode of withdrawal, because that's really scary. I don't know if I've played high before as a character. I'm not sure how I would tie that in. Yeah. I would giggle a lot.
So I feel like there's always I think especially we talk about depictions too a lot with especially like cannabis, like how it's depicted a lot of times in media, and I always think of like we talked old films, Reefer Madness, you know, and that one's just bonkers, They smoke weed and they're like, oh, I'm going crazy,
Like, oh, it's not always like that.
Yeah, so I was just kind of curious, like if you ever had a moment like that, like in a play or a movie where you've had to play a character who's stoned or anything like that.
I've had to play drunk. And I was asked to do that actually before I had ever had alcohol.
Really?
Because I waited till late in life to drink. And then I had to do a scene. It was through my studio. I think we were getting ready for a showcase. And it was the scene from 10 Things I Hate About You, where she's really drunk on the swing, and Heath Ledger's character is sitting with her. And they're like, just be really drunk, like you're hammered. Like, just do it, Hannah. And I was like, I don't know.
Like, I don't know.
I've seen it in movies, but like I feel like a fake.
That's interesting that your approach to that was just like, I'm going to do what other people have kind of done too. Mm-hmm. I get that sense too. I think maybe when we first use stuff, even if we are not used to being drunk, I think we definitely play it up.
Yes,
I think there's
definitely.
Is there a psychological term for that, or
playing something up?
I'm trying to think what it is, because I know it's not the placebo effect, but I remember
I know what you're saying.
When people are like, oh, I'm way more drunk. You're like, you're not that drunk.
Like they just think that they are.
Yeah.
And it's just believing it, exaggerating it to yourself.
Yeah.
And
like when you kind of try to rein yourself in. I always think it's interesting, that mental process of being like drunk or from using, when it's just your mind goes and then you're like, wait a minute, I'm not that.
I'm actually okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I have a friend who will just be like, 1, 2, 3, sober up.
Yeah.
You feel fine.
Yeah, stuff like that. You're like, just cold water or something
okay.
like that.
Yeah.
We kind of talked on stuff like that. So that's really interesting. So when you were going through your degree and stuff, was there a moment where you're like, oh, I really want to pursue acting and stuff too?
Yeah, definitely wasn't pursuing it as much as I wanted to. I think it was always the dream career, but I was definitely influenced by family and people telling me to have a backup plan, go to school for something real, get a real degree. So I went to school for psychology thinking I would actually end up working with special needs kids. That's what I wanted to do, and actually worked in that field for a while, which was really good for me and really life-changing. But at the end of the day, acting was so much more important to me. And I was like, well, I can use psychology in this, so I'll just do that. Yeah, started taking classes more seriously. And yeah.
So I know Arnold Schwarzenegger has a degree in psychology, I believe.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
I've heard of a few. I feel like Tom Hiddleston might. Maybe that's wrong.
That would make sense, too.
Yeah, I think a few people have it, yeah.
Do you, I guess I'm curious, too. Do you think it's kind of allowed you empathy and stuff with that, too? Or,
Yes, I think so. I think that came more from the CIT work and working with special needs kids, though, not as much from the classes, because it's so academic. It's just reading facts and definitions, and you're studying the history of it and who found the disorder and named it after themselves. But working with families, actually tying back into that, working with families with kiddos who have, severe autism where they're nonverbal, or knowing people personally with schizophrenia, I think experiencing that gave me empathy for people who have to walk through that and for the people in their lives who have relationships with those people, because I think it's almost just as hard as having the disorder is loving someone with a disorder. That really, I think, changed me as a person. It's pretty eye-opening to see that firsthand.
What, if you don't mind, what was your experience with dealing with schizophrenia or the patient?
It's just actually not at all what it's like in the movies. Nothing like in the movies. I think, we see these kind of, like you said, really exaggerated, dramatized performances where it's always, each illness is on a spectrum, and we only see this really extreme version. A lot of times people, especially if they're on medication or some type of substance to deal with it, really land kind of in here. Like, it's not as bad, or it's kind of in the middle. They really only slip over here every so often. That's some people, not everyone. Yeah. So experiencing that, it can be very confusing, because a lot of times you're like, oh, this is the person I know. They're fully functional. They're great. They're nice. And then they kind of slip into these episodes where they're a little more mean or a little more distrusting of me, or have kind of perceptions of things that are a little twisted. Like, their reality is just a little different. And so when they sound like someone you know, though, and they look like someone you know, and 90% of the time they're fine, when they slip into that, it's really difficult for you to tell the difference. So in my experience, it almost ended up in situations where I felt gaslighted. It was like, oh, well, it must be my issue because they seem fine, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's very trippy.
It's very interesting. I think you're talking with the training with officers even too. Responding to stuff. Is there a certain, I guess, protocol where they're dealing with somebody who's dealing with an episode, or?
Yes. Yeah. So we usually play it out. Our scenarios were usually the more extreme scenarios that were they're honestly so sad. They're such brutal scenarios that they give us. I was a 15-year-old assault victim. I was, oh my gosh, just young characters with, bipolar or a personality disorder. That was really difficult. They can't maintain jobs or relationships. So usually the cops would walk into the scenario and, for whatever reason, say in that scenario, it's just one-on-one, or they can't get us to leave yet. And they're not supposed to be violent. That's what the training's for, is to discourage them getting physically involved or trying to force anything violently, and just teach them how to talk to people in those situations, which is really important. But they would just kind of walk up to us and have to assess the situation very gently. They have to stay very calm. A lot of times people in those episodes, they're not aware enough about your feelings. They're in crisis. Their brain's so confused. And so they need officers to come in and de-escalate them and make them feel safe. And not, the officer's responsibility is to not get triggered and get worked up too, which is hard. Yeah.
I think that was interesting. There was a Denver Post write-up about you guys.
I think so,
years ago, talking about it. And I think So we talk about training and stuff all the time, and I think that's some aspect of it. I don't think it's brought up or talked about too, is like those soft skills.
Yeah.
And stuff, and how to talk to people.
Yeah.
So I think I've talked to Noelle, like my own run-ins with police sometimes have been very, very blunt.
Yes.
Very like, who are you talking to? Right
yeah,
now?
I think they fall into habits too. They do it all day, every day, which we forget.
Yeah.
You know, oh, they're dealing with people hours every day. Yeah, so they're falling into bad habits too.
I think of that Kyle Kinane bit. It was a comedian where he talked about like cops drive him nuts, just like the rest of them. But he's like, you know, but you're in a service industry where like 90% of people hate you.
Right,
so
exactly.
I try to have some empathy.
Right, give him some grace. There's definitely some gems in there, and there's definitely some concerning.
I think my firefighter friends, I think nobody gives cops more crap than them. So
they're so against each other. It's so funny.
I love the little rivalry and stuff
yes,
like that too.
And
so.
Paramedics too. I've worked with them. Same thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think EMTs. My good friend of mine's an EMT. I mean, I think just sleep schedule and everything else he deals with, man, bless him. You know,
yeah,
a lot of stuff on that. Doing training, and I think I've talked to him about. I mean, we've talked about drugs and other stuff like that. And I think nobody really, to my knowledge at least, like in the law enforcement stuff, is really worrying about cannabis as much as like a societal judgment. You know, and I think I asked point blank a cop. I was like, "What's the worst drug?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Meth."
Yeah.
Like, most of them are like meth.
Marijuana.
My opinion's my own on this, but I'm also like, I think meth is the worst drug too.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. If we played anything, we never got asked to play. Now that I'm realizing you said that, I was never asked to play high because it's not something they struggle to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm curious what, like, if they have to do it specific for certain communities too, or do you just work with DPD, or who do you work with? Is everybody?
No, we worked all over. I worked Westminster, Denver, Aurora, Colorado Springs. We go down to the Air Force Academy and work there. Yeah, so we were all over the place.
Was the Air Force with a bunch of cops, or was it with like security forces there, or what was it?
It was cops. They brought in cops to the base. Yeah. Which was actually really fun to check out that area. They like search your car and ID you before you can get in, and it's pretty locked down.
Have you been to the Air Force Academy before that?
That was the first time.
First time?
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun.
Did you check out, was the church, I believe is what it is, or the chapel? Did you check that out?
No, I didn't.
Beautiful.
I should have.
Beautiful. I think that's like the coolest place. I know a few people have had their weddings in there.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
It's a pretty amazing place.
I'll have to go back.
Yeah. If you ever get the chance,
I'll just sneak in.
I'm
just kidding.
Yeah, they're listening right now. We got the government on this stuff.
I'm sorry.
We got
I'm just kidding. I'm an actor.
We got the ops. I think that's interesting too, because when we talk about I guess community involvement and using what you're doing, paying service to the community, you know. So you're doing that as an actor. Like, how do you think you're doing stuff as a photographer?
Oh my gosh. Photography was kind of an accidental side passion. Yeah, I liked it as a kid and had this dingy little blue digital camera and wouldn't stop taking photos of everything. And then, I just started doing shoots with friends. So it kind of turned into more of a business really only in the last 1 to 2 years. But I've really explored on that side of things, just found a love for taking photos of other actors and other artists. I mean, musicians, dancers, actors, and the way they're now coming to me and asking for more than headshots. They want to capture their brand. You know, they want their Instagram and their IMDb and all their portfolios to be full of photos that really show what they're into, who they are, their color palette, things like that. So that's been, I don't know if it's helping the community, but it's been a blast to help make people, I think, feel seen. Yeah, and capture who they really are. That's so creative for me to step into and not really have a specific set style on my end. I guess a little bit editing-wise, but as far as them picking a location and look, it's all tailored to them, which is really fun to play with. Okay. Yeah.
Is there, with your editing, is there a certain way you like to do it?
No. I kind of just take each set of photos as they are. Yeah. I think mine are a little more dramatic, which makes sense because of who I am as a person. But yeah, I don't think I really have like a set routine every time. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Because I feel like I use like Photoshop, and I know Noelle uses Lightroom. Is that right? Lightroom guy.
Lightroom.
So I got to connect you and my guy Noel on that stuff. So he's a real good photographer
photo
too.
editing.
And we were talking about weddings and doing those too, and
my
like
gosh.
what's the, I mean, because I'm getting married soon, and it's
Yes.
like I think we paid like $2,000 for a photographer.
Yep.
which is low. It
is. It's really low.
Yeah. So I think trying to find stuff like that, because I think content creation is one thing, but I think just weddings and babies and all this other stuff, you're like, how do we be artistic with that? And
Exactly. Yeah. I think which is why I've actually leaned more towards working with other artists and actors, because I was doing weddings also and only family photos, and I was starting to feel, not that I don't enjoy them, but weddings are hard. They're so hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I realized, I was taking baby photos of my niece, and I was like, Ann Geddes is so talented, dude.
It's so talented.
All those baby photos throughout the years, just seeing doctors' offices, and I was like, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
I was like, how does she get the baby?
Like, oh.
You know, I got maybe 15 minutes total
Oh.
of shooting. The rest of the time I was just crying and everything else, you know.
Yeah.
So
Making it look good.
it's pretty tough, I would
It's
say.
really hard.
You know, stuff like that.
It's a challenge. You're just being challenged.
Yeah. So
it's
I got a
rough.
question for you too.
Okay.
And you said you've only smoked once.
Once, yeah.
So one time, what was that like for you?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm going to get red talking about it. This was last fall. I had never smoked weed before and hit up a friend actually from an acting class. It was like, hey, I want to try getting high, but I don't want it to be crazy because I'm scared. I like had this vision in my head of what it would be like, and it wasn't anything like that at all. So he took me to a really nice dispensary, and we picked out, it was more of like a vape pen. Yeah, so it didn't really have a lot of smell. It was really easy to do. And then we bought stuff to make brownies. Not weed brownies, just normal brownies, because we figured we'd be hungry. I don't know what the thought process was there. Yeah. But we got a little high, and we made our brownies, and then we got a little more high. And we were videoing us making the brownies, just being silly. And I'm not kidding, for probably 2 minutes in the middle of the video, I just completely zone out.
Yeah.
I'm like lost deep in thought. And then before and after that, it's just giggling, just laughing so hard, just having so much fun. And then I had the best sleep of my entire life.
That's awesome. That sounds so pleasant. I think we had another guest. He was like, the first time he got high, he was like zoned in on a video game.
Yeah.
He just like, I could not break focus, and then beat the game and everything too. So
yeah,
I think that's interesting that you had that experience. You're like, and you talked about like your preconceived notions and stuff like that. What did you think was going to happen?
I think I have other friends who do it more regularly, or would call themselves stoners. So they're just a little more extreme, or they get really, really high. So I think I was picturing that, like just like lay down on the couch and just completely out of it and just in your zone and talking like a bro, like just totally stereotypical, so bad. I had no idea. Yeah. And it wasn't. I had great conversations. I laughed really hard. It was silly. I think we put on Inside Out afterwards.
Dude, so when you were high watching that, was there like a kind of experience too with your psychology as well, watching Inside Out? I
love that movie either way. Yeah. For psychology, for all reasons. I'll be honest, I fell asleep halfway through. I was very sleepy. That was me coming down, I guess. But yeah, I just remember, I think just appreciating it. Like, it's just such an emotional movie. And they capture such adult psychological concepts in child form. Yeah, I think I remember kind of diving into it a little bit, but nothing crazy.
Like how powerful joy and sadness are working together.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to therapy, that, your multitudes, and you can have multiple experiences and emotions existing at the same time, and you need them too. Yeah.
What was, I think it's funny, like, what do you think is that, I guess, cusp where you become a stoner? Because you talked about, like, your friends are stoners, and I'm like, for me, it's like when you're, like, Shaggy, Scooby-Doo. Yes. Like, that's a stoner, like Cheech and Chong.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I also know, like, if you're, like, a lot of people are functional, very athletic.
Yes. Yeah.
Break that stereotype.
Right.
And I think growing up, I was always like, yeah, Shaggy, you're just hungry all the time.
Yeah, hungry all the time, glassy eyes.
Yeah.
I'm talking back here, man, all the time.
I think I had similar preconceived notions before.
Yeah.
Like I had, smoked, and like my friends who did it, I think they got high at maybe like, where I'd say like the wrong time. It's like, why are you high at 8 a.m. during class, dude?
Like,
but then like
sorry.
looking back, I was like, oh yeah, it was math class. It makes sense.
Right.
So much sense in retrospect.
Yeah, you needed a little bit.
And also I was like, how you don't see the full picture. Like sometimes you're like, oh, you're high in class. I'm like, that dude was probably a straight A kid. I had no idea.
They probably were.
No
I know so many people too that just use it for anxiety. It just helps them sleep better at night. So they just do a little bit, and they're actually better off with that. Having a better sleep schedule and being able to relax and enjoy their evenings. Yeah.
'Cause I think we had another conversation about like what kind of drugs people are on. I think a lot of times like caffeine. It's like we just rail caffeine without even realizing it.
Oh my gosh.
Myself, I'm like, wow, I went through like 4 or 5 cups a day and an energy drink.
It's like a legal drug.
You're like, what is going on here, right?
Yeah, what's happening right
And
here?
then like I think sometimes too, like if I was like, okay, if I was to use cannabis with that, it's like, oh yeah, no wonder my anxiety is like through the roof. It's like my mind's already going like, all right, boom, 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 boom.
I guess I've heard that too. I've heard some people experience cannabis. It makes them more anxious. Yeah.
And I think for me, that's typically happened when I've done it at the wrong time.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's like that's I guess like my time. When I watch a movie, like I think I had the same experience you did. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Just watched Hot Fuzz and laughed my ass off. Nothing bad's ever happened.
Appreciate it so much.
Yeah, nothing bad has happened when I've gotten high. I've just gotten to like the point where I'm like, I'm too high. I'm too high.
Time to go to bed.
Like you get that moment, you're like, I'm way too high. You're like this. It feels like you're on a roller coaster. And you're like, dude, no one like, and you're upside down at some point. And you're like, I want to get off this,
Like,
and it just
woohoo.
keeps going.
And then you
Like,
get
this
stuck
was
upside
fun.
down.
Yeah. I'm being held hostage now.
Yeah. How do you come off of a high?
Dude, it's like I'm learning different things, partially from, our educational blogs at Veriheal. Shout out. Shout out to Lo. I mean, there's talking about one was like adding CBD to your high.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
drinking water, eating like healthy, like having salads and stuff. Because that's not the first thing I go to. If I'm
No,
like,
it's Cheetos and brownies. That was my 2 first choices.
the first things you're like, ooh, we're gonna get some good food.
Yeah.
That kind of
Munchies.
stuff. Good munchies. That's what I need to get.
Yeah.
But I can't trust it's got to be pre because I can't trust myself to cook.
Just, oh no. Yeah, me neither, apparently. Yeah.
I was like, I know I've tried, and it's just I get too like we're gonna. Oh, and then it's like, but what if we add this?
What if I just have a little bit of that?
Like it'll be like if I'm cooking chicken, for example, it'll be like, oh, what if I add beer to it?
Yeah, I feel
And then
creative.
honey. What if I had that? Like glaze it with honey, baste it and marinate it.
Your sober self was like, no.
Yeah, sober's like, don't do that.
Stop.
Hi guys, like we're gonna do
The
that.
directions, please.
We're gonna go off the rails, baby.
Oh my gosh, I will show you the video later of me making the brownies.
Beautiful.
It is not great.
Beautiful. Have you ever made high brownies or tried?
No, I can't believe we didn't just make those into weed brownies actually when we were making them. But yeah, no, I've never tried wheat brownies.
So that was
High brownies?
was that the first time and only time you've gone high, or have you tried since then?
I've tried just recently. My friends had, I'm not educated, I don't know. It was like a little glass tube, and they actually had like the leaves in the tube, and it smelled really strong, and they were smoking it out of that.
Do you know what that is, Noel? A bowl? You just bowl?
I guess so. It was tiny.
In my head, I had the things from like you go to the grocery or the gas station, they got the rose in it. It's like clearly a crack pipe.
Oh no.
You're like, just take the rose out.
That is. Yeah. No, they just had a little one. They had the marijuana leaves in it, and we tried smoking it. They let me try it. I was very bad at it. I didn't like the flavor or smell it like left in my mouth because I'd only tried the kind of
the vape.
Yeah, which was made to not have a big smell or anything like that. So I was kind of a baby about it.
I think that's interesting. I feel like vaping has definitely changed the game.
Mm-hmm. It has.
So much so, like, so this is interesting. So, like, our wedding venue too, up in the mountains, fires, a lot of fires in Colorado.
Yeah.
So there's a smoking section, Just natural, you know, cigarettes, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But they said vapes included. I was like, it's interesting because I know a lot of these pens too are like, I don't see any smoke coming from them. Yeah. So discreet. I'm like, even that? Like, you're literally just being like a pen in your mouth.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my gosh, I see people do it indoors all the time.
Yeah, and it's like, that. I was like, that too? And they're like, that too. And I was like, what?
That is interesting.
I feel like, and part of me is like, I hope they get more like, I guess like more knowledgeable, like where people just see them and they're like, oh yeah, you can have that.
Like it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so different.
Yeah, it's way different.
It's so weird.
I think, and there was, I mean, not a good thing, but like when I was working as a teacher, I'd have like kids have like, I don't like the Juuls.
Yep.
And plugged into their computer like USBs, dude. And like, get that out.
What is that?
They're like, it's a USB. I'm like, I know what it is.
No, it's not. It tastes like strawberries.
Yeah, like that kind of stuff.
Man.
I think it's so interesting. Like that's how, you know, you've experienced it.
Yeah.
Versus I think, and we have a slight age difference. Not that old, but my first experience too was like it was medical marijuana.
Yeah.
And it was with a bowl.
Okay.
And then it was out of a pocket knife.
Oh.
Yeah. So somebody put a pocket knife.
How's that work?
I still don't know to this day. And then it was like I was high, and then later in the night it was about a 5-foot bong.
Oh my gosh.
So that was my first time, and then I'm drinking Smirnoff Ices, you know.
Oh.
So I had a great time, but I just think like how it's gotten to now is very different.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I felt like it was harder to do the bowl, I guess if that's what it's called.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, hey, a last question I want to ask you.
Okay.
If you had to make a smoking circle, or like pick 4 people.
Oh.
Who would they be?
Can it be anybody?
Anybody.
Do they have to be my friend?
They can be your friend.
Like a celebrity?
Anybody. All time.
Oh my gosh. A smoking circle. 4 people?
4 people.
Okay, see, I'm so indecisive. This is a terrible thing to ask me. One would be first my boyfriend because I've never seen him high, so that would be hilarious.
Fair.
2 would be I'd pick like Tom Hanks.
Ooh.
Like, can you even picture him high?
I feel like you'd do a Woody impersonation.
Yeah, I feel like that would just be a really good time. Oh Lord, I don't know. My mom. Because that would be funny. And I don't know, do you want to join my smoke circle?
Yeah, why not?
All right, and Gary.
There you go. There you go, folks. Well, thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people check you out?
Instagram,
okay.
Hannah.Vail. Okay. Post about film and photos and all that fun stuff. Probably my #1 platform.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Hey, and be sure to follow us at Veriheal to stay up to date on the latest in cannabis news. They're making mistakes, but it's okay. Follow us at Veriheal. Stay up to date on the latest in cannabis news, guys. Thanks for listening.
It's like explosions.
Back of the room with a drink in my hand and a blink. I demand you to cut the lights. Acting a fool, got a scheme and a plan. Need green in the bag, I'm all up the price. Only in the city for a couple nights. Posted for the video to up the likes. Don't be trying to hit me cause I ducked the right. I'm about to blow like dizzy with the trumpet pipes. Drunk all night, I'll take a Sprite. Wait, let me get a whiskey just in case. Hit me with a strip tease.